Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of the Franchise Tag. This week, we are joined by Phobe Schecter of Sky Sports and former Bills coach. How are you doing, Phoebe?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Obviously, thank you very much for coming on today. I do appreciate that at the moment, particularly with some big things happening in London over the next few weeks, and working with Sky, I can imagine you being quite busy right now.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the teams are in town. Saints arrived 2 days ago, basically. And then we've got her huddle recording tomorrow, everything with practices, and then obviously the amazing first London game of the year, which
Yes.
I am buzzing for.
And as you've brought it up, so the first game, we've got Vikings and Saints over here. What are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to this. I mean, the fact that the Saints have been here as long as they have as well, just a lot of times that can be the deciding factor for a lot of these teams. The Jags have ended up being a bit more successful because of their experience and knowing the ins and outs of the day, the time change. Um, the biggest thing that we'll be looking for, I think, matchup wise, is going to be how does Dennis Allen and that defense of the Saints handle Justin Jefferson? I mean, we saw him shut down last week, but is that going to be the same team that shows up this week?
It is an interesting one because, obviously, as I mentioned to you before this, I'm an Eagles fan, so we were hearing all about Justin Jefferson going to destroy everything, and then Kirk Cousins decided he was spending the whole game throwing it to Darius Slay instead.
Yeah.
But that's Monday night prime time, isn't it? It's the curse of Cousins. So with the teams coming over, what you mentioned, the defense versus Justin Jefferson, do
Yeah.
you see that being the key matchup on the day?
I think it definitely is. I mean, I think you have to also be looking, I guess, at Alvin Kamara, what they do with him, and are they able to get that ground game running? We have to think about the weather too, right? I mean,
Yeah,
how does that play a role into the environment, into how these teams play? Because Minnesota's indoors, Saints are indoors. Not many people are used to potentially what could be that kind of cold, wet weather that we love so much over here. It's not raining yet, so knock on wood.
fingers crossed it stays like that, because I think part of the atmosphere of the NFL games, if you have good weather, it's all the fans of all the teams mixing and
Yeah,
just the general socializing that happens before the game. You see
yeah,
fan bases that if it'd been any other sport, you wouldn't really see talking.
exactly.
Um, like I'm a lovely chat with a Cowboys fan last time I went down. Um,
Oh.
I say these things you wouldn't really see in most other sports, but
No.
having obviously been to the UK games and obviously to games in the States, how do you find that the atmosphere does differ?
I mean, I think I'd be lying if I said it didn't differ, but what I love about the London games is how you can see teams represented from, all 32 teams, jerseys, old school ones, new guys. I love all of that. People are just passionate about the sport. Like you said, the fact that people are talking to each other. I've been in the stands a couple times where random strangers are asking questions about the game or what's happening here. They've never even seen a football game before. So there's really cool elements to it. And I think that they're doing a better job. I actually used to love back in the day where they would on the screen show like why there was a flag, why there was a
Yeah.
penalty, what that means, that education piece, which I still think we're missing a little bit.
Mm.
Um, Now I don't know if you can really compare to a home game, one of the NFL teams' home games. I think just because you don't necessarily get that all like encompassing feeling and sound and excitement potentially of being at like a home team's game. But I'd imagine that's the same as if you go to, an Arsenal game or a Liverpool game, like that home team, you guys bring the noise.
Yeah, and I can imagine obviously because I think obviously for a lot of British fans, we all love going to the games in London, but I think secretly we all plot a trip to the States to try and
Yeah.
experience a proper tailgate. And obviously your Bills are notorious for being one of the more crazy ones, because even right down to Freddie, one of our hosts, went to the Miami versus Bills game the
Oh,
other day. And yeah, let's just say there was a few people put through tables from the Bills fans.
Honestly, they can't help themselves. I remember when we played Miami, and I was like, our hotel was near the water, so I thought, oh, I'll have a couple minutes, just go for like a walk at 30 minutes, something like that. I'm walking down the beach, and I can hear these people in the background like screaming Bills Mafia. There's like
Yeah.
20 of them. And next thing I know, they've got a table, a fold-out table on the beach, and they're jumping through a table on the beach in Miami. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can't escape these people. Their passion is unrelenting.
We went down to the one clip that Freddie showed. It was almost like it was a glass-topped table. One of these glass-topped tables with like the metal edging
Oh,
around. And I got,
yeah.
that is gonna kill.
Oh.
But yeah, obviously the Bills themselves are notorious for being one of the more passionate fan bases in the
Yeah.
league. And they're a team that you are, let's just say, a little bit more familiar with than the other members of the league. So how was your experience in Buffalo?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved being in Buffalo. I think it was one of the greatest experiences of my life and learnings, and just being around people that want to be better and get better every single day. I think a lot of it has to do with the top down. So whether you're looking at the Pagulas, Kim Pagula, and then how that affects Sean McDermott and his coaching staff and his choices based off of that. I mean, the guys were amazing. The players they brought in were amazing. And it was really interesting for me to see how you build a team from the ground up.
No, I can completely imagine that. And the players that you were working with, how did you find your relationship with them?
Yeah, I mean, they were brilliant. Like, they never treated me any different other than, I want to be a coach. I want to be the best coach possible. And they were completely, trying to help me learn as much as I was trying to help them learn. I'll always remember my first year I was with DB. So Tre'Davious White was a rookie. I had Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. Like, those guys have been, supportive of me since day one.
And not bad players either, to be fair.
Oh my gosh, yeah, like absolute legends. I'm so upset for Micah right now, and
Yeah.
I hope he heals well. I mean, just that defense, like the way I mean, that last game before, like how all of them got injured like that was just so unfortunate. But I mean, they're such a strong knit group, and we would do, obviously we do film review, and I remember doing my first ever film review in the DB room, and I am bricking it because I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to tell these guys what they're doing wrong? Like, I know nothing compared to them. And they were like giving me like standing ovation essentially by the end of it, like giving me hugs, just being like, you did such a good job. And they knew I was so nervous. I mean, I blatantly was.
It's completely understandable. It's one of those things that I think anyone going into it, and obviously with being like fairly being the first, in fact, female coach in the league as well, all the additional pressure of that. And obviously you have clearly been a role model for so many others in the game as a result of your work there. So you mentioned obviously about Buffalo, and this season they're not looking too bad. How do you feel this year is going to go for them?
Yeah, I think that this is a really important year for them. Just looking at the division itself, I knew Miami's obviously on the rise. Patriots haven't been at their best. At least we've not seen it so far. We can't discount them because they still have Bill Belichick behind the wheel. But it's really the way the Bills have come together. I'm interested to see how they manage with all these injuries on defense. But as we saw, for the most part, they only lost to Miami with two rookies on the field. Well, technically more, four rookies on the field by 2 points. So I think the fact that they've had the same coaching staff essentially their entire time there, a lot of the same players, they were able to answer some of those pass rush questions with Von Miller. I think there's still an element of the running game that we need to work on as Buffalo, but you have Josh Allen, you have Stephon
Yeah.
Diggs, like you've got Gabe Davis when he's even more healed. Like, there's Tre'Davious White when he comes back. Like, I'm not worried about them. They are absolutely Super Bowl contenders, and they work so hard at it.
No, they are a team that particularly the first 2 weeks of the season, looked scary good.
Yeah.
We spoke about it on our episode, like our preview episode, saying that we were starting to say that if they carried on as they are, was anyone going to be able to slow them down? And obviously, then a week later, there was a load of injuries and they lost to Miami. So I think we might have cursed them a little bit. So I do see themselves coming back strong, and that relationship between Diggs and Allen is just incredible. The chemistry those two guys have, is insane.
Yeah, you can't deny it. I mean, you see it on the field and the way that, Diggs is able to open up his body language, and Josh just knows he's going to be there. He trusts him 100% to catch the football. They're great friends off the field. They're, great teammates on the field. That is time and time spent together essentially to create that bond.
No, it is. And obviously, they play Miami, who at this point in time, as you mentioned, are a team on the rise. There is a lot of nice things to be said about Miami right now, with even right down to at the start of the year, we had is Tua the guy, and it's starting to look heavily like he is the guy.
Yeah, I think he's getting better. I mean, look, I watched that game the other day, and I still see a lot of who we thought Tua was, like who he was last year. Has he actually changed that much? Not necessarily, but I think he's got weapons around him now that allow him to be who he is and be successful at that. I mean, there's some quick fixes that he's able to make, and even just the amount of time holding on to the football. That also comes with confidence that his O-line's able to protect him and that he's got receivers downfield. And when you have guys like Hill and Waddle who are so rapid, he's able to make those decisions much quicker and kind of take that chance.
And Waddle, who has probably one of the best touchdown celebrations in the league right now with the Waddle. No, they are. I think obviously because I remember watching because I was at the Jacksonville game last year when they came over to Spurs last year, and as you mentioned, there was a few times where he just was missing what looked like an open receiver, and there was just it wasn't quite right. Whereas he seems to have worked on that quite a bit this year, and I think I think when you got a player like Tyreek Hill, you can't really overthrow him.
Yeah, no. If anything, you're underthrowing him, which we've seen a few times
because of the sheer pace of the man. So obviously, the AFC. Is there anyone else that you think this year potentially could stop the Bills from getting all the way to the Super Bowl?
I mean, I think you always end up with the same Chiefs conversation, right? I mean, those guys have been brilliant, and the fact that they have so many different weapons on offense, that I think it's 9 different targets that Mahomes has. There's no way you can not give them the credit they deserve. And we've seen them take advantage of obviously situations in the past, literal situations with 13 seconds left. So I think that's always going to be an exciting showdown, and one that people look forward to. But I'd say that's probably the biggest competition that the Bills have in the AFC.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because I think don't get me wrong, I still think the AFC is a lot more stacked than the NFC. I think there's a lot more top quality sides that side of the game than in the NFC. But I do think that we are looking at Miami if they carry on, Buffalo, Kansas City being your potential AFC champions.
Yeah.
So if we flip it over to the NFC, who is it you're liking over there at the moment?
So I actually, not like any of this means anything, but beginning of the season, my Super Bowl prediction was Eagles, Bills. Not even just because you're an Eagles fan.
I'll take that. But imagine that tailgate as well. I think the city would explode if those two fan bases hit each other. I think it would just be absolute chaos.
Yeah, it would be insane. And I think that the Eagles have done such a great job. Like, finally, I think a lot of it is Hurts, the way that he's able to now. He's not having to rely on his legs. He's able to make those passes downfield. I think he's developed so much, and he really wants it. And the addition of AJ Brown has just been, I think, like a reinsurgence for the team.
Oh, it has, because I say I've been an Eagles fan for as long as I can remember. And I can't remember the last time we had a wide receiver core like we have right now. It's always been our weakness that we normally have one good receiver. Normally we have a good tight end, which that is still what we have. But to have as many weapons available
Yeah.
to Jalen right now. And then if he does get in trouble, he just gets up
Run.
and runs anyway.
Yeah. That's so hard to defend.
It is. Is there anyone else from the NFC you think could stop the Eagles this year, or do you see them as the clear favourites after the first few weeks?
I mean, I don't know if you can ever really remove either of the goats from the conversation. I mean,
Yeah,
and again, this time of year is never really reflective of how the
yeah,
season's actually going to go. Going to week 4, that's nothing, right? Teams are still trying to figure out who they are, what their identity is, who their people are they can rely on. But when you have almost essentially coaches on the field as quarterbacks, I don't see how you can neglect them in this conversation.
and it is exciting to finally see Aaron Rodgers over here coming up fairly soon. Probably the hardest ticket to get
Yeah.
since they've ever launched the games over here. It's probably been that one.
Yeah.
So, how much are you looking forward to that matchup against what seems to be a resurging Giants as well so far this season?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I think, well, first off, the Giants coaching staff are pretty much my Buffalo coaching staff. So I'm really
Yeah,
looking forward to seeing all of them and seeing what they're able to, watching what they've been able to do so far with, essentially a new team. Um, I think it'll be, I think just, again, like being over in London, having the kind of circle of teams completed with Green Bay being the final one to make it over. I think that's just so special in its own right. And to be able to, I'll be with Talk Sport on the day and be able to like actually soak in those moments with the rest of the team. I can't wait for that. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be tough. I don't see it being a very high scoring game.
hmm
Um, I think that Green Bay's running game is going to be something that's going to be massive for them. And the same with the Giants, really, if we look at what Saquon Barkley's been able to do. But I can't wait to like be in the crowd and feel the excitement, when Saquon Barkley gets a big run or, when Aaron Rodgers walks on the field. Like, I can't wait for those moments.
No, I think it's something that I say I'm looking forward to coming down myself. It's pretty much all of us from the franchise tag are pretty much going that one because we've got we've got 2 Green Bay fans in
Yeah.
Abby and in Adam, and then we've got Andy, who's a Giants fan who is used to me usually taking the mick a bit out about the Giants.
I think that's all
Um,
Giants fans, right?
yeah, to be fair, they're used to a bit of stick because I say I think
Yes.
it's been for a long time. It's been a good job that Buffalo is in the state of New York because
Yes.
the rest of New York football hasn't been that amazing for a while. So, but I think that they seem to be starting to turn the corner at the New York Football Giants.
Yeah,
Um,
they are. And I mean, you get a whole brand new staff, right? From GM to head coach to everybody. I mean, I think that's sometimes what you just need to do. Like at the end of the day, you keep trying and trying and trying, and you just need to kind of bring in all new people with a whole new vision and people who have worked with a young quarterback before and know how to really build a program from the ground up, because so many times we've seen within the NFL, within the Premier League, within all these professional teams, people don't get an opportunity to build. It's, are you successful? No. So then you're out, next manager in, next head coach in, and I think that needs to change if we're going to have actual long-term programs.
and you look at the teams that have had that longevity and the coaching staff because there's some that like for example Bill Belichick, how long he's been in there and how successful he's been. Don't get me wrong, I know at the moment they seem to be a team that doesn't seem to know what it is right now.
Yeah.
But having that stability can lead to long-term success. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, there can be some proper bad hires like Urban last year for the
Yeah.
Jags. That was just horrific.
Yeah.
Um, has there any team that surprised you so far this season?
In a positive way or negative way?
It can be whichever way you want to take that question.
Oh man, I feel for the Cowboys right now. I feel for the Panthers. I think they thought bringing in, Baker Mayfield would change the club, and I don't know if
Yeah.
we've really seen that. I think the Commanders are looking to get a bit of a rhythm. You still have the Texans who just haven't really done anything. And I think in that first game of the season where they took the tie and Lovie Smith was basically saying how he doesn't trust his guys. I mean, that's not how you need to be starting any season. So there's a bunch of teams like that, to be honest. And I don't know. It's really hard in the NFL, especially when you start losing like that and people start to not believe in you. I mean, some of these teams who could end up 0-4, the Raiders, they've not been very successful. And we thought, look at how they ended last year. I thought they would be in a way better position than they are.
And particularly when you look at who they added.
Yeah.
They didn't add a bad wide receiver to their receiving core either.
No, I mean, Devontae Adams is a stud.
And yet they're still not, they are worse than what they were at the moment. You don't know whether these things will change and things will click. Yeah. Another example of that you probably could say in relation to the Broncos as well. Because they're a team I think that a lot of people had in potential hunt for the playoffs and potentially going far in the playoffs.
Yeah, Broncos and Colts. I mean, I know Colts had their one game, but you've got Matt Ryan there. You've got Jonathan Taylor. You've got massive, big names who should be able to do something. And they've been, kind of dead in the water for the first couple games.
Yeah, 100%. What do you think the likes of the Colts and the Broncos need to do to turn that corner?
I mean, I'd say for the Broncos, it seems to me still like an not understanding what the offense is, a lack of communication with Russell Wilson, with Nathaniel Hackett. I know that he's brought in another coach now to assist him with situations on game day, which is good. It shows inexperience in his way, with his head coaching career. I think Russell Wilson probably thought that he would be more successful as well, coming to a new organization. And, I don't feel like I've seen flashes of him and what he's been able to do in the past with the Seahawks, but he's just not been able to really pull it all together yet, unfortunately.
No, and it's sad to see because obviously he's gone in, he's had this massive contract, this massive pay rise in effect. And then it's just, I think that week one where they have the opportunity to go for it and you're paying him all that money and then you decide you're going for a kick, that just didn't seem right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think if you're bringing in a quarterback like that, you're bringing him in because of who he is and what he can do. You have to show trust in those situations because you could flip that and look at what Dable did with the Giants. I mean, I think he knew what he wanted to go for 2 points, for example, but he still had that conversation with his defense. He still had that conversation. We've seen it over the years with Harbaugh and I don't know why I'm just blanking right now. Lamar Jackson, he had those conversations and he gave his guys a chance and he showed that he had trust in them. And you have to do that early on because otherwise it's really hard to build that trust.
Because there was one coach as well, to be fair, that I've got a soft spot for because obviously he went on to win the Super Bowl for us. And you got Doug Peterson as I said when we did the podcast after that week, I said, there's no way Doug Peterson makes that call. Doug Peterson goes for it fourth on whatever when the game's on the line. And him being at Jacksonville, how are you finding that fit right now?
I love it, to be honest. I think that Trevor Lawrence has really not had much support over the past few years, and that can essentially stunt the growth of a quarterback. You look at what he had to put up with last year with Urban Meyer, and it's really been an uphill battle, I'd say, for him. And now having Doug Peterson, someone who's won a Super Bowl, ex-quarterback himself, is really able to communicate and help build and develop Trevor Lawrence, which is really what he needed. I know a lot of times we forget these guys come from college and then they're straight into the NFL. There's still a massive learning curve. And I think now that he's got the right people around him from a development and coaching standpoint, well, now we're seeing him be able to make these decisions and make decisive decisions on the field.
And then when you look at their defense, seems to be vastly improved this year as well from previous years. I know obviously they've had a lot of draft picks early for the last few years, which
Yeah.
does kind of help with that a little bit. But their defense seems to be a lot more resolute this year than previous years. What do you think the difference has been from the previous defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great question. I think that, you have like looking in the past, like Calais Campbell was always like amazing on the D line. And I think they, even if that D line were able to get to the quarterback, it didn't really affect his throw that much. Or if it did, the secondary was never able to step up. I think they've made some really great additions, and the whole thing about American football is you're all cogs in a machine, right? Like
Yeah.
every single person has to do their job in order for the next person to be successful. And if D line, for example, feel like they're constantly, all right, we're getting after the quarterback, we're causing these decisions, and then you're not able to capitalize on the back end. You can get that inner turmoil as well, where you feel like, well, I'm doing my job. Why aren't you doing your job? And I
Yeah.
think there's a way more collective approach to the defense now, and they're working as one as opposed to a bunch of individuals, if that makes sense.
Are you looking forward to their return? It's not like it's a surprise when Jacksonville come here.
No.
It's almost like, oh, they're back again. Joking.
Yeah.
They're a clue I think that a lot of us Brits now have a bit of a soft spot for because
Yeah.
of the fact that we are so familiar with them. And also, I think us Brits really love an underdog. We
Yeah.
like, when you think back to some of our famous sports people haven't been that great at sport, like Eddie the Eagle, for example. Britain seemed to love him because of the fact he
Yeah.
didn't seem to do that great. So the Jags are coming back again, going back to Wembley as well.
Hmm.
How do you feel that will go?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's going to be, like you said, I mean, that's now the UK's home team essentially. And I think, the Jags, NFL UK have done a great job of really growing that fan base from a young age. And now we've got a lot of young people who are interested. And I think now that they've got like a quarterback who can actually throw the ball a little bit, it makes it a bit
Yeah,
more exciting to get behind them. Um, so no, I mean, I'm really thrilled for that, and to have them at Wembley. I think they'll be excited to be there, which is kind of like their home
it
essentially
is.
away.
I think even when you look at their run game and the fact that you've got two very, very good running backs there, I think there's also
Yeah,
frees up that pressure a little bit
yeah,
on Lawrence and the fact that he doesn't have to be
the
the
guy.
guy
Oh,
on his own.
yeah,
Which does help. I think there are a side that I'm actually quite excited for this year. I think that don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're going to go off and win division or anything like that. I just think they're going to look competitive. I think for because they come over here every year. I think that's what us fans in the UK want in
yeah,
teams that come over. We want
yeah.
to see those competitive teams. So far, we have covered off the 3 games that are coming over here. And obviously, this year you mentioned you'll be working with TalkSport. Was that with
Mhm.
TalkSport for all 3?
Yeah, so well, that will be so this first game will be with Sky, and then we go to Germany, go to Munich for the Chiefs and Bucks game, which would be really exciting.
That'd be incredible.
Yeah, I can't wait. I was coaching in Germany last year, so we played Munich in the GFL. So I mean, it's beautiful there. It's just after Oktoberfest, so a good Stein, and we'll be cheersing down the road.
I think, to be fair, that was the game that I think that was sold out the quickest, wasn't it? If I remember rightly, as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it was because you had all the British fans going. You can get a cheap flight to Germany.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Germany, a lot of times, you've seen it at the games. We've got tons of people from across Europe, tons of Germans to any of the London games. And Germany's had a longer basic like development of American
Mhm.
football, literally, whether you're looking at NFL Europe and the teams that they've had, Frankfurt Galaxy, and and then their youth programs and adult programs, and just having a semi-professional league, they're on top of it.
They are, and that's the thing when you mentioned there about the European League and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
It's a shame that obviously us Brits no longer have teams in it like we used to,
Yeah.
like back in the day with the Claymores up in
Yeah.
Scotland,
London Monarchs.
and the Monarchs. Um, it is a shame that we no longer have those kind of
Yeah.
teams in that. So obviously we started working with Sky. Obviously, we're used to seeing you on Sky pretty much every week at the moment. How
Yeah.
are you finding working with the likes of Neil and the rest of the crew?
Yeah. I mean, it's been incredible. Like Neil is such a professional, and just being able to learn how he operates, how you create a show like this, and what all the ins and outs of it are. Like, the amount of preparation time it takes for myself, for Neil, for all of us to, feel like we're able to give the most to our viewers. And I mean, just great guests, right? Like Jason
Yeah.
Bell has been incredible to learn from, and him and I have really nice, like, in-depth conversations when we're off screen. He'll bring something up on TV, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I see this, or he sees it from this perspective, and we're able to kind of have that almost like coach player discussion, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, Dante Hall's over. We got to work together last year with NFL Overtime. Dante's just energy, like he's just
Yeah.
such good fun. So I just feel so fortunate to be a part of an amazing group of football minded people.
And obviously Sky as well, with putting a lot behind her huddle this year as
Yeah.
well, which obviously you're part of.
Yeah.
Hannah Wilkes, who is obviously someone we've actually had on and spoke to a few times. We love Hannah. And obviously Ash, you mentioned obviously about the knowledge of that. The thing that you found that we're missing sometimes for the British games was I remember Ash when she first started to appear with her NFL for Dummy series, which was
Yeah.
really good and informative. And it's good to see her on week in, week out now as well.
Yeah.
So how are you finding her huddle and working with the ladies?
I love it. I mean, it's been, I think naturally when you are probably one of few, you tend to create your own like group. So we've got our
Yeah,
own little like sisterhood group going on over here. And they're great to lean on. Like I ask Hannah so many questions all the time. And, just from her experience, and Ash, I've been able to go down and see her and see her place in Peckham, and, see the vintage clothing shop, which is unbelievable. And,
yeah,
just having people with same interests, right? Like we get to chat about football. We get to chat about Ash's obsession with Green Bay Packers. It's
light obsession she has.
yes. But no, it's cool. We're all pulling in the same direction, and they've done. I mean, Hannah's totally driven, uh, her huddle, and it's amazing to see what the UK and what Sky are offering, that they're wanting to even celebrate women in the
Yeah.
NFL.
Well, it's one of those things that I think has always been needed. I think because then women have been involved in, even right down to like you've got not just obviously in coaching, like obviously yourself. Then you got various presenters, but also now when you think of obviously the XFL coming in this year, we're going to have our first ever female like football. Like, I can't remember like owner of the whole
Yeah.
sport in effect in Danny
Yeah.
Garcia.
Mhm.
Between her and obviously her and Dwayne that
Yeah.
in effect. So that's going to be quite exciting in effect to have our first ever in effect league owner in effect
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Danny Garcia, who seems an extremely driven and passionate
Yeah.
woman. So what do you see the long-term vision for the likes of her huddle?
I think that it will be, I mean, for starters, we've not even, I know at the moment we're doing bi-weekly, and there's so many women to interview, and so many, not
Oh
even
yeah.
just women, people from within the sport who have impacted women's lives. And, Scott Pioli's a brilliant one who's done so much for myself, Katie Sowers, Jennifer King, a bunch of us that have been in the NFL. So I think it's also celebrating some of the men who have really helped us to get to where we are. So I think it's just going to keep growing and developing. I think, there's just so many stories to tell. And the podcast is brilliant because you really get a nice in-depth listen into more of these conversations. And I do hope that we're able to, whether you make it more into following some of these people around, and more like the, Peacock series that they have in the States about all the women and then within the sport. But yeah, I just I think it's really exciting that we're even celebrating this,
Well, and bearing in mind, like the person who I used to follow for all of my fantasy advice was Kay Adams.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my gosh.
she literally was like, she'd be the person who I'd be getting most of my fantasy support and advice on. I'm like, what's she telling me I'm going for now? Is that
Yep.
player available? Because her knowledge was
Exactly.
just ridiculous. So obviously we talked about what's like working for Sky. So what is the long-term aim of Phoebe? What is your long-term aim here?
Well, Amy Trask made me feel fine with with not having a plan. No, you know what? I'm really enjoying this kind of analytics piece, being able to chat, and I think my overall goal has always been kind of finding a way to not necessarily bridge the gap, but be some sort of connection between the US and the UK. And I feel like at the moment I'm able to do that alongside my coaching. I think coaching the NFL is always a dream. Going back is always a goal. But I'm really enjoying the fact that I'm able to impact so many people over here, whether it's within the domestic game, across Europe. But I still work with NFL Flag in the States in the off season. So, secondary age schoolgirls. I just think I'm able to have my finger in many pots essentially and impact so many different people with where I am now. And I want to continue to give people opportunities and continue to send the elevator back down.
No, and it's obviously vastly appreciated that the amount of work that you do, because obviously particularly in the British game as well, you've obviously been very, very vocal and supportive. And it's, as I say, even domestically here in the UK, watching that grow, because I live in Liverpool, and there's obviously you got quite a decent, we've got not a bad side up here in Merseyside, Nighthawks.
Yeah.
And but obviously when you look at how that seems to be growing across the country, where you're seeing teams sprout up here, there, and everywhere now. So, and obviously you're one of the people who's been heavily involved in getting that up and running. So it's been very much, obviously, it's impressive to see. And
thank you.
Yeah. And so obviously thank you very much as well for your time today, Phoebe. It's been very much appreciated, particularly with the week that you're about to have. And any time is very much appreciated for us here.
Thank you.
Been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome. Any opportunity to talk football, I'm down, especially the Eagles right now.
No, if I get the chance to talk about the Eagles, you wouldn't get me stopped. It's one of those things that it's a rare treat. Well, I'll say it's a rare treat for me to be smug as an Eagles fan. It's 80% of what I've been as an Eagles fan. But right now, particularly, we are looking very good. But I know, as an Eagles fan, to always be a little bit skeptical. Like, relative injury free for us doesn't usually happen for long for us.
Fingers crossed.
I know. So thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for your time today. And obviously, thank everyone who will be listening to this. We'll be back again with another very special episode soon. Thank you all.